everybody. Thanks for joining us for Social Media Targeting Tactics for a Post-ATT World. I am Max Willens. I am a senior analyst at Insider Intelligence, and I am joined by a great set of panelists today. We have Jacqueline Lin, the Vice President of Growth for Spot and Tango. Hi, Jacqueline.
Hi.
And we have Jimmy Bennett, who is Vice President and Global Head of Brand Engagement and Partnerships at Wendy's. Hi, Jimmy.
How you doing?
So before we begin, let everybody know where you're tuning in from. You can use the chat window that's to the right of the video feed. And importantly, ask us some questions. We have budgeted time at the very end for them, but if something really hot comes over the transom, we might fit it in, as it lands. So ask questions early and often. We look forward to them. So yeah, let's get started. I'm sure a lot of the people assembled today have heard of both your brands and have maybe seen your ads in the wild, but let's just do some quick level setting here. So I'll ask both of you, what is your, where's your social spending concentrated? And also how big of a piece of your digital spending is it? Jacqueline, maybe you could go first.
Yeah, sure. So we are a D2C brand, and we have a lot of our spend going to social media. As we're in the pet food space, you can imagine a lot of interactions with the owner and the dog, which is great for social media content. I would say most of our spend are concentrated in traditional social media channels such as Facebook, Meta, and some are in YouTube, TikTok, for example. But yes, social media spend has been a majority part of our media spend at our company.
Fantastic. And Jimmy, what about you?
Yeah, we're still very heavy in traditional media. Video is still a big part of making sure that we can drive awareness, relevancy, just making sure that our messages can get out and have the reach that they need to. But social media is a real important part of our overarching strategy. We need to make sure that we are connecting with a younger set of consumers. We have that ability to go a little bit deeper in one-on-one engagement. We've definitely been increasing and continuing to increase our spend in social media across the years. It continues to be a very significant part of our overall plan.
Makes a lot of sense. And I guess the other kind of level setting piece here is, what are you using the spending for? I mean, I feel like, there's some brands that view social almost purely as a performance driver. Some folks think of it more upper or mid funnel. And I could see ways in which both your brands could use it for all up and down the funnel. So Jacqueline, again, what do you use it for? What kind of engagement you're looking for with it?
Yeah, so we use social media for top, middle to bottom funnel. So we've been able to leverage a few different social media channels to, one, gain impressions, click-throughs, and then retarget them with other channels that we see working very well as a funnel, and customer acquisition cost is very efficient for us with a very balanced approach from top, middle to bottom. And so it's a very balanced, well-diversified funnel strategy for social media planning.
Jimmy, what about you?
Yeah, on our side, making sure that we're constantly having this conversation with consumers, that we're out there and there is an appropriate cadence where we're having a dialogue. It's not just a, hey, we're going to shout a message at you and then not talk to you for another couple of weeks, a couple of months. We need to make sure that we're always interacting. We're always finding these opportunities to have this back and forth, to have this dialogue with consumers. So, making sure that we are approaching social with that goal of creating these relationships is 100% what we're always intending to do. Awareness, definitely making sure that we're relevant, we're top of mind, all the way down to how do we drive people into our own platforms, like the Wendy's app, into third-party delivery, into a number of different channels that can drive from a digital perspective. But primarily, how do we make sure that we have this constant conversation, that we're touching base, that we're staying top of mind, and always staying as relevant as possible with these consumers?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I want to dive in. Obviously, the ATT is in the title of this panel, so we will be talking about that and what changes it's made. But because top, middle, and bottom parts of the funnel are important to you guys, I am curious a little bit how you guys sort of see the paid side of your social activity complementing the organic piece of it, because to what you were saying, Jimmy, conversation is kind of one of the chief promises of social platforms, and even with some of the signal losses we'll be diving into, it's kind of an important piece of it. So like when you think about those two sides of your presence on social platforms, how do you sort of see the paid of a organic sides complementing one another?
Is that for me?
It is, yes. I'm sorry, Jimmy, for you.
Sweet, yeah. I love this topic. So we have a holistic approach with paid and organic. We definitely are always making sure that both of those sides of the consideration, the plan, are talking to each other. We lean in on the organic side and think about that a little bit more around making friends. How can we lean into the passions, the conversations that our consumers want to be participating in? And then simultaneously, we need to sell some burgers. So we need to make sure that we're going out there. We're inviting them to lunch. We are pushing the appropriate messages. We have a great menu of different things. We have offers that are always at consumers' disposal. How do we make sure that we're talking about that? It starts, though, with that organic side of the consideration and the conversation, where we are making friends. We are, continuously making sure that we are creating these relationships, that we're creating this permission and this ability to go out there and talk about all the great products and all the great things that we need to do. Luckily, everybody needs to eat. Everybody has a mouth. So that's an easier part of the equation. But man, if you are establishing a friendship, if you have a relationship, if you have a connection with those consumers, it makes it so much easier for the paid side, for where we're able to push our business pieces to really resonate in such a phenomenal way, because we've already established this relationship with consumers. We're not coming in blind or cold. We're coming in with basically an invitation, a permission to come and talk to these consumers with these business needs, because we've done the work, we've done the due diligence of establishing these relationships on the flip side, on more of the organic side of that conversation.
That makes sense. And Jacqueline, I'm sure that all sounds like an appealing kind of dynamic to encourage, but you guys are coming at this from a really different angle, right? Where you're a newer brand, you're digital native. There isn't a several decades worth of brand familiarity that you can build on. So how do you guys think about those two things supporting one another to the extent that they do?
Yeah, although we are a digital native and earlier stage company, we also leverage both organic and paid on different purposes, right? So organic, we have, for example, our Instagram account that we engage with our existing customers. A lot of our existing subscribers, they are also followers of our social media account on the organic side. And so how do we continue to keep them engaged with the right information, the education content, so they keep subscribing, but also upselling opportunities in the future? So organic is a very huge strategy and channel for us, in addition to obviously the paid side, converting them from prospect to customers. And if you think about the different levers we can lever organic, for example, we have an influencer program that's very successful, that we have influencers that we partner with. They post very organic feeling content that we're able to get more followers to these influencers. And over time, they're able to nurture their audience. They visit the website, and that funnels into our middle and bottom funnel paid strategy of traffic. And so it's definitely a very holistic ecosystem when we think about organic, paid, everything together.
Makes a lot of sense. So I thought that would be good sort of context for everybody listening in, because it'll help kind of shape the answers to these next questions. And let's talk a little bit about life after ATT. This is now something that went into effect a little over 2 years ago now. And Jacqueline, let's just start with you. I mean, when you guys started to notice that you had lost some signal from ATT making this change, how did that change what you guys do?
Yeah, so it's a challenge for all digital marketers of signal loss. Regardless, I think there are a few things we did in the past few months that were pretty successful for us. For example, leveraging more the most latest AI technology, algorithm changes. For example, ASC, Advanced Shopping campaign on Meta, was a huge success for us. And so as we enter this phase of AI age, I think there's more and more that we can learn from just existing signals. And two, we were able to still get very efficient targeting by fine tuning our audience and understanding where our core customer audience is, like demographic wise. And so we analyze it's more female within certain age group, and then we're able to fine tune our campaign more towards the audience that we're seeing success. And the third tactic that we're able to have some ground success is having more diversified creative assets that could talk to different audiences. And so that means, okay, people who are in the top funnel, middle funnel, or bottom funnel, right? Like bottom funnel retargeting, we have more straightforward offer led ads versus top funnel, it's more education and getting to know about the brand. And so having sort of like an array of tools I can use has been really helpful for us.
Mm. So finding something that speaks to lots of people in lots of different states.
Yep.
Jimmy, what about you?
Yeah, we are huge fans of data over here at Wendy's, and we will take it when we have access to it and keep giving us more. I think we do recognize at the same time, targeting, man, love that as well. If we know someone is a vegetarian, I don't want to serve them a hamburger ad. So the ability to get smarter is something that we are constantly hungry for, and apologize for using that word as bad pun, but we're hungry for more and more data. I think we do also recognize the world is constantly changing. Post-ATT, there's so many other things that are going to come down the pike that came down before it, that are going to come down afterwards. We can't be putting ourselves in a position where we are totally reliant on one data source or one set of information. We're constantly looking for how do we pull in all of these access points, all of the ability to think smarter and to think a little bit more as targeted as we can get. A lot of testing and learning, a lot of let's try this out and see what happens. Also, a necessity to not be super precious around each and every single test and learn that we do have. It's, did this work? Did it not work? It's what worked well about this? How do we take this and continue to pull in some of the things that worked well, continue to move forward in that direction, not get tied up in kind of the lack of access that we might have from a data perspective, but how do we constantly keep going out there, finding more ways to think smarter about how we need to be connecting and making those appropriate relationships with consumers with the available data that we do have. So again, it's something that I wish we had more access, more data in that capacity, but also we're not going to let it hold us back from making the right connections, getting the right information about what consumers are passionate about. I mean, all of that stuff is things that we can do in order to make sure that we're coming back to connecting with consumers, making those relationships as important and as critical as possible to the entire long-term work stream that we have with these consumers.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea. That at its root, the sort of goal for participation and presence in the channel doesn't change, right? You
Right.
still have to, as you say, make friends. It's just the sort of means with which you can conclude that you have forged a friendship, as it were, might have changed a little. Was that difficult to sort of, go back to the drawing board and go, okay, if this was, how we drew that line before, let's figure out how to draw another line? Like, talk a little bit more about that.
Difficult, yes. I think honestly, I feel like marketers at this point are prepared again for the changes and the nimbleness and the need to constantly be flexible, not only from hey, these things are no longer at our disposal, but we now have opportunities that maybe didn't exist before. So, we're constantly in this state of let's continue to reevaluate our path forward. Again, like you said, our strategy remains consistent. We know exactly what we have to do out there. We have to make these friends and we have to invite them to lunch. The ways that we get at it are going to constantly change. And I think any marketer at this point that, convinces themselves, it's like, now I figured it out. It's like, yikes, that's when you're in trouble. Always anticipating that things will continue to move forward, to move backwards, to, move in all sorts of different directions. How do we make sure that we're constantly optimizing and not putting ourselves in a position where we're in severe trouble if something goes away, but always thinking about, what is the right path forward? That's a constant conversation with our agencies, with our partners, with vendors out there in the world. That is something that is not going to change. luckily, that meant we were prepared for everything that came down in a post-ATT perspective. But it's also something that, again, we know is going to be happening constantly in the future.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Jacqueline, I want to come back to something that you mentioned, which was the sort of reliance on, Meta's tools, for example, to sort of do things with automated targeting. And I want to basically use that as a segue to talk about ASC Plus, which I'm sure everybody on this call has heard of and has considered, may even be spending money using them. Talk to me a little bit about your organization's decision to use ASC Plus campaigns. Like, I feel like I did a report on social media ad spending that published a couple of weeks ago, and in talking to ad buyers, it sounds like interest in ASC Plus and investment in ASC Plus keeps growing, but so does in some corners some apprehension about kind of giving over so much control and insight to a third party, even if it's one as integral and strategically important as something like Meta. So talk to me a little bit about your decision to spend using that format.
Yeah, sure. So we like to adopt the testing methodology. And so although, ASC Plus has been around since mid last year, we didn't immediately jump in. We wait a few months until, hey, we're seeing that more and more brands are adopting. And then even within our company, we started with testing. And so testing traditionally managing the campaign ourselves versus letting the algorithm run and keeping everything else the same. And we saw pretty much significant increase in conversion rate and decrease in our customer acquisition cost by using ASC Plus. And so with that testing methodology, step by step, we're able to invest more in the ASC Plus campaign and continue to monitor if customer acquisition cost is still in line with our target. So yeah, we started with the testing methodology, and then now most of our spend is in that campaign. That being said, we are also continuing to monitor if there are sort of like algorithm glitches that, hey, we're suddenly spending too much on an ad that we didn't intend to spend on. And so it's a combination of manual intervention versus letting the machine does the job, right? And so potentially launching new ASC campaigns, layering into the existing ASC campaigns when we see the existing ones fatigue. So that's what our strategy is. Hey, testing and see if it works, but always look out if there's something that we need to optimize ourselves on top of that.
And do you feel like you have this kind of, there's a peace of mind there because you guys are a new brand and there's still a lot of kind of awareness raising that you're okay with them, an ASC Plus setting a really wide parameter just to sort of, deliver results? Like, talk to me a little bit more about why you feel comfort level with it above and beyond just sort of an efficiency angle.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we actually set our target for ASC to optimize conversions. And so it's depending on how you want to strategize the different social media channels within your portfolio, right? So for us, Meta is more of a middle to bottom funnel channel. When we turn on budget, we see increase in conversion. We turn down budget, we see decrease in conversions immediately. And so it's obviously a very fast conversion channel and funnel for us for Meta. And for ASC, it's optimized towards the conversion goal. And so we don't really see that, hey, it's all of a sudden spending on top of funnel for us. It's doing its job for converting, and it's performing pretty well for us.
And Jimmy, you in an earlier response, you mentioned you guys love data, and I'm sure that you have lots of resources dedicated to, crunching it, cleaning it, poring over it, looking for, green shoots and white space and all the other, marketing similes. How do you guys think about, the kind of automated tools that are available in platforms like Meta and more recently in TikTok as well?
Yeah, and man, we're always needing to get better around how to clean it and how to look at it and all of that good stuff. So I don't want to imply that we've cracked the code there, because man, it feels like that is still such a big conversation. Just the internal information that people have access to. How do we make sure that we're using it appropriately? I think, again, anything to get us smarter, great. We will continue to lean into things like that. We will continue to investigate. I think we want to make sure that we're not blindly just following the data. We do understand that there is an art in there, and there is some soft skills. We're needing to make sure that we, again, are establishing these relationships with consumers. It's not just about the quick get. It's also about how do we make sure that we are making these appropriate connections, and we're not only maximizing what it is for this singular interaction, that we're setting ourselves up for what the next interaction and the next interaction and all of those other things are. So love to use things, again, to optimize, but I don't think we're ever going to be in a position where we fully put all of our emphasis behind something like that, because we do want to make sure that we're thinking about broader passions and broader ways to bring more people into the conversation. Again, everybody with a mouth is our target, and everybody does have a mouth. So how do we make sure that we're continuing to expand the reach of the conversation? That's going to continue to be something that we need to balance as we're thinking about how do we use these tools to help us focus, to help us be a little bit more targeted, sign us up for things like that, but at the same time, making sure that there is a balance for all of the other things that we need to accomplish simultaneously.
That makes a lot of sense. So this conversation has tilted pretty heavily in the direction of Meta, and with good reason, right? I mean, they're probably the biggest spend, and they probably take up a lot of your brain space in your respective heads. But I think we should talk a little bit about TikTok too, and sort of the value that provides, and the extent to which it's distinct from what one might find on an Instagram or a Facebook. I mean, maybe Jimmy, I'll start with you. I mean, like, what do you use TikTok for, and how do you sort of get value out of it?
Yeah, TikTok's been a fun one for us. I mean, I'm a fan of the platform as a consumer myself. I know that it's very much out there in the conversation. People are talking about TikToks they've seen. I think that's indicative of this is a place where a brand like ours needs to perform, needs to be present. The idea of video content, audio content combined, needing to put the right type of content in front of these consumers is something that has forced us to think a little bit differently about how do we put our brand out there. I think folks are probably a lot more familiar with our Twitter presence, and definitely the personality that Wendy's has on there. We don't have that same sort of simple ability to take words and put them out there, and they mean something, and they can spread in the same organically that some of these other platforms have allowed us to engage. So I think the entirety of TikTok as a platform, the way that it's approached, the way that consumers use it, the way that they're expecting content to be a part of it, it's forced us to rethink our approach to how we do come out there and put forth the appropriate messages, the appropriate connections to make sure that we're driving messages in the right way. Honestly, it really is about an awareness play. It is about how do we get our personality out there. We can allow folks to continue to see passions like March Madness and college football coming up, different music relationships that we have out there. Let's make sure that those relationships are at the forefront of a conversation, but also having fun ways to make sure our food shows up in fun places and fun experiences and fun occasions, so that the entirety of Wendy's as a brand, as a personality, as a friend is showing up like you would expect to see a TikTok creator putting forth that conversation. But we've been leaning very heavily into that organic space, making sure that we are using this as a way to make those connections as viable and as powerful as possible.
Jacqueline, I'll ask you the same question, and then I got an interesting question from the chat, which I'll hopefully be able to weave in as well. But what about you, Jacqueline? How do you guys view TikTok? What's the upside and value and opportunity for you there?
Yeah, we use TikTok in our paid ads. It's smaller spend compared to Meta, obviously, but it's good that we're seeing that the same kind of short form video that's performing on TikTok typically resonates also well on, say, Facebook Reels and even YouTube Shorts. The formula is the same for all channels, so we're able to leverage the learnings there to other channels. In terms of audience engagement, organic growth, we see YouTube and IG more of two channels that we're focusing on growing that audience. TikTok right now, it's less and less likely to go viral because the algorithm changed recently. So it's more of, hey, how do we use that channel to engage with the younger side of audience that we have within our audience? Yes.
That's that idea of taking learnings and leveraging them across the platforms, I think is really, really interesting, because we have seen this kind of trend toward all the platforms embracing short form video in some form or another. Talk to me a little bit more about that, Jacqueline. I mean, like, are you finding that, the data bears out that, if this creative or this concept really hits on, Reels or, YouTube Shorts, it's gonna also do some numbers on TikTok as well? Like, what are you sort of seeing there?
Yeah, I would say it's not 100% applicable across different channels, but big direction what typically resonates well on TikTok. I would say more than 50% of a chance it will also resonate on Facebook. And obviously, the different channels, they have different audience in terms of interest and demographic and all that. But we're seeing typically the more younger audience are on TikTok, and Meta and YouTube have a wider in terms of the age and audience. And so you'll still be able to use some of the TikTok content on Facebook, but in that case, we'll probably target and cater more towards the younger audience on Facebook. But
So
it's more encompassing on Facebook, and TikTok, I would say it's a little bit niche.
interesting. But it's sort of the idea is that it's sort of directionally indicative. So if this really pops here, then there's a kernel inside that thing that can be used to the other ones.
Yeah, I say directionally it lines.
And what about you, Jimmy? I mean, like, talk to me a little bit about what you see there. Like, are you, aiming to find stuff that's sort of, efficient in that way, or do you guys really kind of come at it with we're going to be as bespoke as possible, platform by platform?
Yeah, we're more in the bespoke camp and leaning into different trends and leaning into different ways that the content is showing up on these various platforms. That's not to say that we aren't comfortable if something is working on TikTok. Let's try it out on some of the other platforms just to see how it resonates, just to see what the reaction is. We're also seeing a lot of consumers and fans doing that naturally for us, where they'll pick up TikTok content and post it in other places. That's an indication that the content really resonates, but then that starts to create this permission that some of this content can bleed into some of these other platforms. It's not us forcing it on people. It's introduced by some other folks in the conversation, which makes it that much more permissible in order to do it. But love that video and the amount of time that consumers are spending with these videos is just absolutely unbelievable. It's something that I'm super excited about, that we get to spend more time with consumers through this content, and we're going to continue to make sure that we're doing it right so that we don't scare anybody away or encourage them to not spend the time with us, making sure that we're doing everything on the up and up so that we can maintain that permission to spend that time with the consumer.
I'm going to give everybody in the audience one last chance to drop some questions in the chat. There was one interesting one that was asked earlier that I got caught up in the conversation and didn't ask, but I'm curious. This is sort of a fun definitional question for both of you. When you say organic, or when you think about the organic side of your presences on these platforms, does that really and truly mean like all organic, no boosting at all, or do you implicitly and kind of understand that the organic stuff maybe has a separate budget for boosting or pouring gas on something that's working? How do you sort of distinguish those things?
Yeah, I can answer that question. So I think organic these days are not truly pure organic if you can see that content resonate very well on a paid side as well. But obviously, like, we typically deploy, if organic is working well, then should we put some paid behind it, like boost it, spark it, etc. And sometimes organic feeling ads are very effective in converting as well. And so it's not, like black and white these days of like, hey, organic is organic and paid is paid. It's a fine line between where do you think this organic organic content, quote unquote organic, can also be very applicable for converting in paid.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think paid is plan paid, and organic has opportunistic paid that could go along with it if we see that it's moving in the right direction. But typically with organic, we're not assuming that there is going to be sort of a boost. Again, when there is something that really just clicks out there, we'll want to lean into that and optimize it and maximize it as much as possible. But that really has become the distinction. It's like no dollars, yes. That's really been the fine line that kind of distinguishes what those things are.
Fantastic. 25 minutes goes fast. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Jimmy. This was a great conversation. Thank you to the audience for posing questions. I do appreciate those as well. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. Next, please join us for a deep dive session on CTV with Mountain's Ali Hayeri. To go there, just click on the tab below the video feed that says next session. Thanks for joining us.